Okay. Hi there. Welcome to Hourglass Workshops and Conversations with Nancy and Cheryl. I'm Nancy Burns. I'm an acupuncturist in San Jose, California.
And I'm Cheryl Seavey. I'm a writer and a blogger in Los Gatos, California. And today we've got a really good topic. But before we get to that, I want to talk about kind of my 90-10 rule. And that's where, we might get 90% of life right, but boy, that other 10% is the wild, wild west and kind of crazy. So a couple weeks ago, I took a couple of watches. We all have those battery operated watches that all tend to die about the same time. So I took a couple watches over to the little watch repair place to get the battery changed. And as I handed them to the guy, he goes, okay, he takes one of them and he goes, okay, this just be a few minutes. And then I hand him my other watch and he looked at it. He said, oh, he goes, this doesn't have a battery. And I go, oh, is it dead? And he goes, no, you just have to put it in the sun. It's a solar operated watch. And of course I was terribly embarrassed and I asked him if I owed him anything and he laughed and he said, no, he said that one's on the house. So anyway, and then I sent a note to a friend of mine and she made the comment that her husband took a watch in, similar situation, and the guy told her he had to wind the watch. So, this is a perfect example of where technology meets just good old regular stuff.
Yeah.
So anyway, he felt like an idiot. So there we go. So what have you been up to, Nancy?
Uh, Nothing really. Just, usual regular stuff, nothing interesting. But that kind of leads into what we're talking about today, and that's invisibility. And when things like that happen, oftentimes we feel like, wow, I wish I were invisible.
True, true.
But um, But today, I sent Cheryl a link, and I've already forgotten the girl's name that did the video.
Kelly Bosch, Boesch, and we'll be adding that to the show notes and the comments below. So.
Yeah, she did a beautiful video that a friend sent me on invisibility as an older woman. And I know that Cheryl and I were just talking about this, and I know that I have lots of patients who are feeling invisible, either invisible when they're out in the world, invisible in their family, invisible with their husband, um, just generally feeling invisible. And I have kind of delved into this with them, and it's really it's an interesting feeling. And I have not felt that way. I asked a number of my friends who I'm actually very surprised that they said yes, they have felt invisible. And Cheryl and I were just talking about invisibility. And Cheryl, what's your theory on this?
Well, I think that if we grew up kind of sensing the world and how our worth was defined by how others perceived us, which I think is a predominantly female feature, not necessarily limited to us, but nonetheless. And I think that if that's how we grew up seeking the attention or value, self-worth, worth from other people, if we do that when we're younger, I think that that carries forward as we get older. And
Yeah.
and we lose that. I mean, it's just a factor of of life and as we go on.
Hmm. Yeah. And this is a really sensitive, wonderful video. And she turns the whole perception of invisibility kind of on its head. So
Mhm.
I really encourage you all to watch it because I think there's a very positive takeaway in that, which we've talked about before, and of course we've all made jokes about it. I remember reading a book about these three women who went and stole things because they were invisible.
Yeah,
Nobody paid any attention to the fact that
right.
they'd walk in and steal things,
Yeah.
and they got a kick out of it. It was a goofy
Well,
book.
I do think that there's a factor of invisibility that gives us it can be a superpower
Yeah,
where we're kind of, and women in general, again, this is great grand generalities, is that we tend to be underestimated by others.
yeah,
And ourselves. And I think that, we can really utilize this to our advantage.
uh-huh. And on the other hand, if you're just strictly talking about physical beauty, well, everybody had their day in the sun. hopefully everyone or many people, and youth is beautiful. There's just no two ways about it. When a beautiful young woman walks in a room, we all look
Uh-huh.
because it's very pleasing to us as human beings to see a beautiful specimen. And as we age, things start heading south and it's not nearly as pretty, but you know, what do you think, Cheryl?
Well, I think it's a different type of beauty, and there's the exterior and the interior. And I think as we get older, there's much more of a focus on on depth than on appearance necessarily,
Hmm.
because it is going to change. That's just the nature of the world.
Right.
And I think acceptance of kind of where we are at any given point in time can be a very powerful perspective.
Well, I loved your analogy about the theater. You want to say that
Oh
one?
yeah, yeah. I was talking to a friend of my kids one afternoon, and she was lamenting that she's got three children under the age of 10, which is of course a very busy time, as you know, as we know. And she was saying, oh, they grow up so fast, they need me less, and and as time goes on, they're going to need me even less. And I said, yeah, I said, parenting is kind of a double-edged sword that if you raise your children to be responsible and independent, they will grow away from you. And I liken it to, our life in the theater. And as parents, when our children are really young, we're on stage, we're dressing them, we're teaching them how to speak, we're teaching them how to act in the world and behave. And as they get better at that, then we move off the stage and we're in the wings and and guiding them, cheering them on, and they'll glance over at us and acknowledge that our presence is there. And then as they get older and more responsible, we're in the audience cheering them on and watching from the sidelines as they do their life. And my goal at this stage in my life is to just make sure they don't toss me out of the theater for bad behavior. you know. So anyway, it just is so true. Of course the gal laughed and she said, yeah, she says, I just think I got kicked to the side of the theater. But they still come to us, and it's not a bad thing. It's just a different time in life, and I
Yeah.
think we need to embrace each phase of that.
Yeah, and accept it. And
Yeah.
I think that's the hardest thing for a lot of women that I know is accepting that place in
Hmm.
your kids'
Hmm.
lives because they're
Yeah.
busy with their own lives,
Right.
and it is absolutely no reflection about how they feel about you.
Right.
It
Right.
just is more that there's only so many hours in the day,
Yeah.
and their priorities right now are their children and their
Hmm.
family as they should be, you
Right.
know.
Yeah, and I think
So,
to sometimes counterbalance that when I'm feeling like, gee, they have, I've talked to them for several days, and it doesn't mean that they don't care about me. It just means that they care about other things more at this point in time.
right.
And to kind of dispel that, I will then contact them. Hey, you want to come on over for dinner? You want to get together and initiate the action. And I think that's true in a lot of times and situations where we do feel invisible, and we're not, but people are busy and they're just engaged with other things.
Yeah. Yeah. So watch the Zoom link and let us know what you think. We
Yeah,
liked it,
yeah,
and we hope you do too.
yeah. And I think we'll talk about this more because it is an issue, and it's a tough one.
It
It's
is.
it's really a
It
hard
is.
one,
Yeah.
and the more we do for ourselves, the better we're going to feel.
And that's the key. We cannot be looking constantly outside of ourselves for reinforcement
Hmm.
and giving us value. We've got to find the value in our own lives and
Yeah,
create it.
yeah.
Um, just like we were busy with our children, now it's our job to be busy with our
Hmm.
lives,
Hmm.
you
Well,
know?
and I mean, and look at one of the comments that, perspectives you have is you have found a place where you do what pleases you.
Yeah,
And
I
that's a
do.
great perspective because
Yeah.
so many of us have spent a good portion of our lives trying to please others,
Hmm.
whether it's in our careers, whether it's in our lives, our personal relationships. And to really kind of poise the question, what do we do to please ourselves?
Yeah, that's a
And
good
find
one.
out what that is and focus on that. And if
Yeah.
it pleases you, do more of it. If it doesn't, drop it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
for
So
sure.
until next time, take care, be well. Bye now.
Bye.